Breaking news at this hour. A sudden 2 a.m. announcement has sent shockwaves through millions of Americans, especially seniors, Social Security beneficiaries, and anyone living on a fixed income. Just moments ago, confirmation came in that Donald Trump has approved what insiders are calling a $2,000 dividend check, and the quote from his team is simple and powerful: "It will be paid." People across the country woke up to buzzing phones and unexpected alerts. No one expected movement tonight. Not after weeks of silence. Not after advisors kept saying negotiations were dragging. But something changed behind the scenes, and whatever happened pushed this announcement forward in the middle of the night. And yes, the number everyone is talking about is real: $2,000. Listen very carefully. This isn't being described as a stimulus check. It isn't being described as a rebate. The word they're using is dividend. That single word tells you everything about where this money comes from, why it's being issued, and who they plan to send it to first. And in just a moment, I'll explain exactly what makes this different from any payment we've seen before. But before we go deeper, think about the timing. Why 2 a.m.? Why not wait until morning? Why push this out when most of the country is asleep? According to early reports, senior policy staff urged Trump to move immediately after receiving updated revenue projections tied to new tariff collections. These projections were higher than expected, much higher, enough to trigger what insiders call the dividend clause, meaning a portion of tariff-generated funds can be redirected into direct household relief. And here's the part that matters to you most. The first groups mentioned in the internal memo include seniors on Social Security retirement, disabled Americans on SSDI, low-income individuals on SSI, and people receiving VA benefits. That's why so many people are talking about this tonight. This isn't some distant idea. This is targeted. This is specific. And this is happening because advisors believe households on fixed income are under the most pressure right now. You know that pressure well. Rising food bills, rent increases, medication copays, out-of-pocket Medicare costs. Every month the budget gets tighter, and for many, it's becoming impossible to stretch one check across 4 weeks. That is exactly why this announcement is hitting so hard. $2,000 could be the difference between catching up and falling deeper behind. Now stay with me because the details get even more interesting. This payment is being described as a one-time dividend tied to trade revenue, not traditional government spending. That means it doesn't follow the same rules as stimulus bills. It doesn't need the same level of congressional approval. And according to the early language from the memo, the funds have already been allocated at the Treasury level. If that's true, then the process from approval to payment may move faster than anything we've seen in years. But before you get too excited, there are still important questions. Who gets it first? What's the timeline? Are there income limits? Will this affect your regular Social Security check? And what happens if you receive SSI or SSDI instead of retirement? Those answers are coming, and what you hear next may surprise you. Because the memo includes a line that almost no one expected. A line that hints there may be multiple waves of payments, starting with people already verified through federal benefit systems. If that's accurate, Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA beneficiaries could be at the front of the line. In a moment, I'll break down the backstory, the sources, and the hidden details behind this midnight decision. But first, understand this. Tonight's confirmation is real, and the words attached to it are clear. It will be paid. Now let's get into what pushed this announcement forward and why the $2,000 dividend check is suddenly back on the table in such a dramatic way. Now let's go deeper into what led to this moment, because none of this happened overnight. What you're seeing right now is the result of months of internal debate, shifting economic reports, and pressure from advisors who insisted that fixed-income Americans needed immediate relief. According to people familiar with the discussions, the idea of a dividend-style payment resurfaced in early policy meetings after tariff revenue projections began outperforming expectations by nearly 20%. That unexpected surge created a pool of funds that advisors argued could be redirected straight to households instead of being absorbed into general spending. One of the key names linked to this push is Treasury advisor Mark Callahan, someone known for advocating direct payments when inflation or market shocks hit older Americans the hardest. Reports say Callahan met with Trump twice in the last 10 days, presenting models that showed how a targeted $2,000 dividend could stabilize struggling seniors more effectively than any cost of living adjustment. Another voice in the mix was Representative Linda Barron, a Republican from Ohio, who has been calling for tariff-funded relief since early summer. Her message was simple: if tariffs generate the revenue, Americans deserve a portion of the return. Behind closed doors, discussions intensified as updated inflation data showed widening gaps between Social Security checks and real-world expenses. Medicare Part B premiums are expected to rise again next year. Food prices aren't dropping as quickly as predicted. Housing remains high. Advisors warned that without quick relief, millions of senior households would face increased financial strain heading into 2025. And that's where the term dividend came back. In policy language, a dividend is a share of revenue returned to eligible participants, not a stimulus funded by debt, not a benefit that needs long legislative battles. A dividend is treated more like a distribution, and insiders say that is exactly why Trump agreed to the model. It avoids the political war over the word stimulus. It avoids slow congressional negotiations. And it allows the Treasury to move faster because the funding source is already identified. But here's where it gets interesting. According to the memo reviewed by several staff members, early payment phases would rely heavily on existing federal benefit systems. That means Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA databases would be used to issue the first round. These systems already have verified identities, verified payment information, and verified eligibility. That dramatically reduces delays and cuts down on fraud. Now, before we break down the payment dates and eligibility rules, you need to understand the hidden backstory that pushed this forward so suddenly. Last week, internal analysts discovered that tariff revenue from the new steel and technology imports exceeded projected quarterly targets by a substantial margin. That triggered a clause that allows a portion of surplus revenue to be allocated toward household economic relief. Advisors immediately began drafting plans to use that surplus to support Americans on fixed incomes, arguing that these are the households most affected by price fluctuations caused by tariffs themselves. This was the turning point. The moment the revenue numbers crossed the threshold, the argument shifted from whether relief should be issued to how fast it could be distributed. That is why you saw a 2 a.m. announcement instead of a daytime press briefing. Once Trump signed off on the directive, the Treasury had to begin preparing the internal language before the markets opened. That's also why advisors chose the word confirmed in their statement. It wasn't speculation. It wasn't a leak. It was approval. Now we move into the part you've been waiting for: payment windows, eligibility, new rules for 2025, and the truth behind who gets the $2,000 dividend check first. Listen carefully, because this is where the details matter. If the memo stays unchanged, the first payments would roll out in phases. Phase 1 would target people already receiving federal benefits, starting with Social Security retirement beneficiaries. These individuals already have verified direct deposit information, making them the easiest group to reach quickly. Phase 2 would include SSDI recipients, people who receive disability benefits through the Social Security system. Because many SSDI recipients already have payment accounts on file, This group could receive the dividend within days of the first wave. Phase 3 would include SSI recipients, who are typically low-income individuals who rely on monthly assistance. Their rollout could take slightly longer due to additional income verification checks. Then comes Phase 4, VA beneficiaries. This group includes disabled veterans, survivors, and long-term VA pension recipients. Because the VA system operates independently, their timeline may be offset by a few weeks. But the memo makes it clear they're included. Let's talk numbers. The payment amount is confirmed as $2,000, not up to $2,000. Not $2,000 per household unless multiple eligible individuals live at the same address. This is a flat amount per qualified person. But here's where people get confused, so let me make it extremely simple. Your regular Social Security check does not decrease. Your SSI deposit does not change. Your SSDI benefits do not get deducted. This dividend is a separate payment, a one-time distribution. It is not taxable according to the working draft, and it will not count against future COLA calculations. Speaking of COLA, this payment is arriving at a time when the cost of living adjustment for next year is projected to be modest. Analysts are estimating between 2.3 and 2.6%. That means for most retirees, the increase might be around $30 to $50 per month. That's nowhere near enough to cover actual price increases in groceries, rent, or medications. That gap is the exact reason advisors argued for this dividend. They said seniors cannot wait a full year for COLA increases that barely help. Now, here's something many people aren't talking about yet. The memo suggests there may be multiple releases of dividend payments depending on tariff revenue performance in the next 2 quarters. That means this $2,000 check could be the first of more distributions if revenue continues rising. Nothing is guaranteed, but the language hints at possibilities. Let's shift into timelines because this part is critical. Early drafts indicate a 30-day review period at the Treasury level. Once internal verification is completed, payments could move to the distribution phase. If direct deposit is used, Social Security and SSDI recipients could see funds within 10 to 15 days after the final authorization. SSI recipients may see payments shortly after, depending on verification cycles. VA payments would likely occur last due to coordination between agencies. But before you get too excited, here's the truth. Not everyone will qualify immediately. If your information at the Social Security Administration is outdated, if your bank account changed, if your address is old, or if your payment was recently returned, you may experience delays. That's why officials are advising people to ensure their information is updated as soon as possible. One outdated detail can hold up your check for weeks. Let me also warn you about something serious. Anytime a national payment is announced, scammers move quickly. If you receive phone calls asking for your Social Security number, hang up immediately. If you get emails claiming you need to pay a fee to receive your dividend, delete them. The government will never ask you for money to release a payment. And no official agency will call you requesting your bank account. These scams always increase during high-pressure moments, and seniors are the most targeted group. To help you understand why this payment matters so much, let me share 2 stories that advisors reportedly reviewed. One involves a retired teacher from Michigan who has been delaying essential medication because her copay increased faster than her COLA adjustments. Another involves a disabled father in Arizona who receives SSDI and has been choosing between keeping the lights on and buying groceries. These real situations are the reason policy advisors say the dividend couldn't wait. And here's another detail that will surprise many people. The memo stat. Yes, that this payment should not affect SNAP eligibility, Medicaid coverage, or low-income housing assistance. It is intended to be neutral, meaning it won't be counted as income for most benefit programs. Again, this is based on the working draft, but the intention is clear. They don't want this dividend to knock people out of programs they rely on. So, what does all this mean for you? It means that if you receive Social Security retirement, SSDI, SSI, or VA benefits, you are likely part of the earliest groups considered for payment. It means the amount is $2,000. It means your regular monthly benefits remain unchanged. It means the timeline could move faster than any stimulus cycle we've seen before. And it means the government is trying to deliver relief without causing long political delays. But before you panic about whether you're counted or not, there's more. The memo outlines a verification path for individuals not currently in federal benefit systems. That includes low-income workers, caregivers, and people who recently filed taxes but do not receive government benefits. These individuals may be included in later phases once IRS verification is completed. Now you understand the context. Now you understand the backstory. And now you understand why the announcement hit at 2 a.m. with the words "it will be paid." Next, we move into what happens in the days ahead, what you should be doing right now to prepare, and the exact steps you need to follow to avoid missing this payment. Now let's talk about what happens next, because the next 30 to 60 days will determine exactly when and how this $2,000 dividend check reaches you. According to the timeline included in the memo, the Treasury will now begin its review and preparation phase. This includes verifying revenue totals, confirming eligible groups, coordinating with Social Security and VA systems, and finalizing the distribution order. None of this requires a new act of Congress, which is why advisors believe the process can move forward quickly. Once the Treasury completes its review, the payment authorization move. S to the distribution stage. This is where your preparation becomes critical. The agency systems will rely on the information they already have for you. That means the bank account tied to your Social Security or SSDI deposit, the address the SSA has on file for SSI recipients, the details stored in the VA payment system. If any of this information is outdated, your payment could be delayed or even returned. So here is your step-by-step action plan. First, log into your Social Security or VA account and check your information. Make sure your bank account is current. Make sure your address is correct. Make sure your direct deposit method is active. Second, if you recently changed banks or moved, update your information immediately. Third, if you receive SSI, you may need to confirm your income and living situation. This is standard procedure and helps ensure your payment moves through without extra review. Fourth, avoid any phone call, email, text message, or letter claiming you need to apply or register for the dividend. There is no application. There will be no processing fee. Anyone who asks is a scammer. Now let's talk about political reactions, because the response to this announcement has already begun. Supporters argue that the dividend is an efficient way to return tariff revenue to the people who feel inflation and market pressure most intensely. They say it's faster than traditional stimulus and more targeted because it focuses on Americans on fixed incomes. Critics, however, are questioning whether tariff revenue should be used this way. Some lawmakers claim the funds should support industry development or deficit reduction. Others are raising concerns about future revenue stability. But behind the scenes, analysts say the political debate won't slow the first round of payments. The authorization process is already moving. Agencies have their directives, and the Treasury framework is in motion. Even critics admit that reversing the directive now would cause unnecessary confusion and financial harm to vulnerable households. In other words, the political noise may get louder, but the payment process continues. Now let's talk about you. Because at the center of all this policy and paperwork is a real person trying to survive rising costs. Someone tired of stretching a fixed income check across 4 long weeks. Someone choosing between groceries and medication. Someone wondering how long they can keep going without help. And that's why this moment matters. $2,000 won't solve everything, but it can give you a breath, a moment to reset, a chance to catch up on the bills that have been chasing you for months. If you're a retiree, this dividend can help you cover winter costs. If you're on SSDI, it can finally give you space to handle unexpected expenses. If you're on SSI, it can provide relief that your monthly deposit simply can't match. And if you're a veteran or a surviving spouse, this dividend can help you stabilize your household during a year with rising medical and housing costs. For many Americans, this payment arrives at a time of real need. That's why advisors fought so hard to push it forward. They said seniors and disabled Americans shouldn't have to wait for political battles to end before relief arrives. They said tariffs created the revenue, and the public deserves a share of it. And in the end, that argument won. So, what should you expect next? Expect updates. Expect timelines. Expect agencies to release clearer guidance soon. Expect the process to move quickly once the final authorization is published. And expect more announcements as revenue numbers continue to shift in the coming months. There's even early talk that if the next quarter outperforms expectations again, additional dividend payments might be considered. Nothing is guaranteed, but the possibility is there. And that's why staying informed is more important than ever. Every update matters. Every deadline matters. Every verification change matters. You don't want to miss a single announcement, especially when it can ECT your payment date. So here's my message to you. You are not alone. Millions of Americans are watching this unfold with this same mix of hope, confusion, and urgency. Millions are waiting for relief just like you. And millions are relying on clear information that cuts through the noise. That's what we do here. We break it down. We simplify it. We make sure you know exactly what's coming and what steps you need to take. If you want updates the moment they happen, make sure you subscribe. Hit the like button so more people see this breaking news. And tell me in the comments what state you're watching from and whether you receive Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits. Your voice matters, and your story might help someone else who's going through the same struggle. Stay hopeful, stay prepared, and stay informed. Better days are coming, and you deserve the relief that's finally on its way.